This is The Law Show on CL 650. Now back to the show.
Oh, this is the Legal Man song here on The Law Show this morning. It's Sterling Fox with Joe Murphy and Alex Stein-Wittgenstein from Murphy Batista LLP, Vancouver personal injury lawyers in studio. With us, we're talking about concussions and brain injuries. We talked about them in the context of sports, which is how many of us have come to know about concussions and to learn quite a lot about them in recent years. But really, for most of us, it's more likely to occur to us, should it ever happen, in some kind of car accident context. Both our guests agree on that. So if we're talking about car accidents, obviously here in this province, we're talking about ICBC, Joe Murphy. And again, we talked earlier about the need to identify a problem. There might be a concussion. There might be some kind of serious injury resulting from this accident. So maybe we should go talk to a lawyer, talk to somebody, find out what kind of legal legs we have to stand on. You talked about the 2-year limit for sure. What about ICBC? After an accident, how quickly, if one feels potential concussion-type injury, how soon do they need to be contacted?
Well, if you're a driver of a car, ICBC is your insurer. If you're a passenger in a car injured, ICBC is your insurer because you have this what's called Part 7 or no-fault benefits, so they pay towards your medical expenses and maybe a bit towards your wage loss. So ICBC is your insurer, brings you into the claim center, and they say, we're here to help you. They have a big poster up on the board that says, give us a chance, don't talk to a lawyer.
Right.
And they say to the person, okay, we've got these forms we need you to sign. And if one form might be a statement about the accident that usually has some errors in it. And another form is an authorization for all your medical records. And another is an authorization for all your work records, all your employment records. Mm-hmm. And as the person who ICBC has insured, you're not obliged to sign a consent for the medical records or for your work records. You're not. There's nothing that requires you to do that.
But you could be made to feel like you should make sure the sign on the dotted line.
Oh, the adjuster expects you to do that, and if they don't, these people are labeled as potential troublemakers.
You're uncooperative.
Yeah.
Why is this person being so hostile?
Yeah, and full medical records contain all sorts of things that have no relation, no connection to any injury suffered in an accident, but may contain personal information about that person, about their family.
Right.
And to agree to release all of those records to ICBC is something I would never do, but many people think I don't have a choice. I have to do this, when the reality is they don't.
Well, that's it, and Alex. I think that's the issue, though. When you sit down with an adjuster, you go to one of these claim centers, and you get the guy walking around and with the clipboard and doing all the stuff on the car. Then you sit down at the face-to-face across the desk, and there's a fair bit of pressure going on. And all you want to do is be as cooperative as possible. You just want to get this thing over with. So in a lot of cases, it's where do I sign? Let me out of here. And even if you're apprehensive about signing because you are a little concerned, maybe there's a little more going on here than meets the eye. I don't feel very good. And yet you still want me to sign all of these forms. And so if I don't or I question, I'm labeled as uncooperative. I'm a bad guy all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's the idea that many people might have in their head.
Well, we're made to feel that way.
You're made to feel that way, but you shouldn't. And if you have any concerns, and you should have concerns when someone such as your insurer is asking for all your medical records,
right? Why
not just call a lawyer and get a bit of advice on whether or not you should be doing this?
Joe, can you say to the person who says, the adjuster, we need you to sign this form so we can get all your medical records. Can you say to them, look, this happened 3 weeks ago. You can have my medical records from 3 weeks ago to today, but that's all you can have. Where do I sign for that? They're going to balk at that one too, aren't they?
You're going to be labeled as a troublemaker and a potential problem. It's an advantage to see a lawyer because our firm commonly says to the adjusters, our clients aren't signing those forms, and the adjuster accepts that.
Right.
Because the adjuster accepts there's no reason for them to do that. In the course of a lawsuit, we have to produce to the insurance company the relevant medical records, so we get them and send them on.
Right.
But we don't send them records that aren't relevant and may well have information about our client or their family that they don't want ICBC to know about. There's a variety of personal things, and often people will go into the doctor and say, well, my daughter's having problems about this. It could be a problem with a child, a husband, a job, wife, all sorts of things that are in the records that aren't anything that you want disclosed to anyone outside you and your doctor.
Sure.
It's confidential.
Right.
And there's no reason it shouldn't be kept that way. So that's one of the advantages of going to see a lawyer early on, is the lawyer then deals with ICBC. You, the person, don't.
Okay. And I think, Alex, in some cases, and Joe has brought this point up in the past, there are some cases where, going through a traffic accident is a pretty rattling experience. Even if you're okay afterwards, your car sure isn't, and your life has been disrupted, and in some cases in a pretty traumatic way, because it's no fun. So when you go to ICBC, you just you want to get through this thing quickly, but you call a lawyer first. And if you call Murphy Batista or send him an email or get that first initial meeting, in some cases, you actually don't need a lawyer. And the firm will be the first to tell you, you don't need a lawyer here, sir. You're okay. But what you should do is this, this, and this. So even a little bit of legal advice via email or the phone can be all you need. But still, it's extremely helpful no matter how small.
Yeah, I think everyone will feel a lot more comfortable in going to such a meeting if they first talk to a lawyer, just to set out what aspects of what ICBC is requesting is legitimate and what is not. And you're not going to be charged by a lawyer for that advice,
right,
in most circumstances. I mean, most firms, Murphy Batista certainly, you talk to a lawyer, give you that advice, and you don't have to worry about then getting a bill from a lawyer for speaking to someone for 10, 15 minutes about what they should do, even if it turns out they weren't injured in the accident and just want a little bit of a heads up as to what they should do before their meeting.
Right. Joe, what happens, though, in the case that you've described earlier with the family doc? You get banged up in a car accident, you go see the doctor because it's just not quite right, and yet, he checks you out and gives you the blood pressure and takes the usual office visit tests and says, by all appearances, you're okay, and you go away. And just, if anything, the condition deteriorates a little bit, and the clock is ticking through all of this. And so when do you just sort of have to go, look, I like my doctor, I respect my doctor, but it's not happening here. I've got to go somewhere else. I need a second opinion.
Well, it's not so much a second opinion. You need a doctor to focus in on whether there is a concussion here. And the scenarios are, sometimes it's a physiotherapist that thinks, why is this person not able to remember the instructions I gave them about the home exercises?
Okay. So
sometimes the physio will contact the family doctor and say, they're having problems with memory and this, is it possible they've got a concussion? But the family doctor often doesn't have the time to spend finding out what all is different and wrong, and doesn't have access to the family members. So our first meeting with a client may be 2 hours long, client and the family.
Right.
Family doctor sees them for 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And they just see the person who's injured, who has the least insight into what's different.
True.
You could ask them questions, do you often lose your car keys? Well, yeah. Did you do that before this accident? No. Mm-hmm. So if you say, how's your short-term memory, they'll say, fine. But when you get specific,
not so much.
I say to a client, do you enjoy watching movies? Yeah. Since the accident, do you find sometimes you can't stay with the movie till the end? They say, yeah. What about before? No, I used to watch it all through.
Sure.
Really enjoyed movies.
Mm-hmm.
That's attention span.
Okay.
So there's all sorts of little questions you can ask. But the family doctor simply doesn't have the time And again, it doesn't have the access to the significant others. You don't send a group of the family in to see the family doctor.
True. You mentioned a physio just before we take the break. If you're seeing a physiotherapist because you've been in an accident and it's not feeling right and you figure, well, maybe I should just go get a little work done here, and the physio is able to put 2 and 2 together in terms of concussion symptoms and so on, who's paying for the physio during all of this? You're probably doing it out of pocket because your neck hurts.
Well, no. If someone's got a neck and back injury, let's take the scenario of a rear-end collision. They're going to have neck and back injuries. The family doctor will send them for physio.
Oh, okay.
But the physio spends 45 to 60 minutes with them, as opposed to the family doctors, maybe 7 minutes, 10 minutes. And it's only when you spend time with these people that you really start seeing these problems.
Okay. And so the costs will ultimately be borne by
ICBC
for
as the medical insurer pays part of the physio cost, and the person out of their pocket pays what's called the user fee.
More on concussions and brain injuries and ICBC with our guests from Murphy Batista LLP when we return on The Law Show.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.